once your bank details are on there, it's a very simple and could be quite dangerous process.
Just doesn't seem very ethical. It doesn't seem the way that I'd want to buy a product.
If you're forced to use real money, it's an all-time low.
What if, to unlock the full version of this game right here, you had to pay an extra $4.99? An extra $4.99 to change the narrative, the look of your character, the items you use in game. Would you do it? Welcome to the world of microtransactions in gaming.
The modern version of microtransactions started with free-to-play PC titles and mobile gaming. They have steadily seeped their way into a form of ubiquity amongst console gaming, a platform which requires players to purchase a game disc before the possible process of micropayments occur. A microtransaction within gaming is the exchange of real currency for in-game cosmetics through downloadable content. Microtransactions tend to range between a price of £1 to £10. Pricing factors are dependent on the publisher's payment models, which vary across the industry. Microtransactions can be used by developers to provide players the means to enhance and further customize their virtual in-game characters. However, these items and enhancements are usually referred to as cosmetics due to the fact that microtransactions rarely tend to affect gameplay or balance, especially when it comes to online multiplayer.
As you can see, microtransactions have come on leaps and bounds in the past 20 years, with microtransactions becoming the latest focal point in today's titles. A game at retail will usually cost you $49.99, but this one right here will cost you $49.99 to begin with and then extra money on top of that. That's because the disc content is locked, which means there's content within the game that you need to unlock through purchasing microtransactions such as weapon skins, character icons, all different various implementations of microtransactions and customization.
As microtransactions are prominently used to affect your character or in-game presence visually, they can be perceived as dangerous and addicting for players that are hooked to in-game worlds, a distraction of virtual reality away from the outside world, which can cause some players to shed large amounts of cash. League of Legends, the most played game in the world, is renowned for its inclusion of microtransactions. The game made well over $1 billion from microtransactions and was already approaching that milestone back in 2014. League of Legends is the best example of a game in the industry that handles microtransactions effectively, with a strong in-game currency system and cosmetics that do not affect the flow of the game or the balance. George Mabry, semi-professional League of Legends player with over 100 days played on the title, elaborates on the game's microtransaction meta.
So League of Legends is a MOBA, which stands for Multiplayer Online Battle Arena, which is a free-to-play game and it's optimised for most computers nowadays, so even kind of the worst computers can play it, which means it has a player base for literally anybody. And considering it's only a free game, they've made so much money off microtransactions. In 2015 alone, it was over $1 billion, which obviously has enabled them to upgrade the game in multiple visual updates and server updates and all that. I think it's very popular because it's a free-to-play game and it's always being updated, so there's kind of different metas are created by the game and the different metas suit different people. So at one point it might suit one type of player, and then at the next month it might be better for another player, and they're always releasing new microtransactions, new skins and new champions and everything that the players can spend their money on, or they can play and earn the IP to buy them.
Gears of War 4, Microsoft's flagship Xbox title, recently introduced microtransactions to the franchise, causing some animosity within the game's community. I spoke with one of Gears of War's most popular personalities and YouTube content creator, Lee Soares, known as SAS Shadows.
So for my experiences with microtransactions have been pretty good so far. A lot of games nowadays in 2017 are using them, and sometimes it's for the better of the game, but sometimes the developers go a bit too much over that line of either if you need and want to have them yourself, or if you have to have them to either get parts of the game, or if you have to have them to just get the advantage over other players in multiplayer. So there's a lot of games out there that microtransactions are in, such as FIFA, Call of Duty, Gears of War, Halo, a lot of pretty much every game nowadays, and most of the time it either comes down to just cosmetics or actually having a huge effect or impact on gameplay, which is where it gets into the sort of iffy areas. I think for 2017 it has both its goods and its bads. So the positive sides of microtransactions nowadays are gaming's got to that point where it's got so expensive for companies to create games, and sometimes it can be to the point where if it's a make or break it sort of game. And if you look at the price point in game shops, like the amount it costs a game to get hasn't changed in like 10, 20 years. And so the positives of microtransactions really help the developers sort of get that extra money or extra income towards the whole development of the game process, because depending on how expensive it is. And so I think developers really do need microtransactions nowadays just to keep going and for gaming just to keep progressing. But obviously the negative side of microtransactions are if it affects the game too much in terms of like players online, and if it just has an effect on the gameplay. So
I'm here in Tobacco Dock in London at EGX Res Gaming Festival to find out what gamers think about microtransactions and the effects they're having on the gaming industry today.
EGX Res is London's biggest gaming event, bringing thousands of gamers together at London's historic Tobacco Dock to celebrate the world's ultimate pastime. The event boasts a vast library of games for gamers to enjoy and provides the opportunity for the players to meet the developers. Paladins, a new esports-focused first-person shooter on the market, has skyrocketed to popularity since its release to the public in 2016. Paladins reached 4 million players on PC last year, receiving an overwhelming response from gamers around the world. Paladins developer, Ahoy Studios, are able to continually support the free-to-play game due to its strong implementation of microtransactions. I spoke with Ahoy Studios community content and esports specialist Hugh Judson, who divulged into the game's microtransaction system and explained the purchasable content they provide.
So as you go through the game, completing objectives and eliminating enemies will grant you credits. These credits can be used to purchase in-game items, of which we have several tiers and 4 different categories. So we have defense, we have utility, we have healing, and we have offensive items. And these items are your counterplay. They're your mid-match adaptation to what the enemy team is presenting you with. So we have a variety of different cosmetics available to us. Each champion, when they're released, has a few different recolors available to them in different slots. So to start off with, you'll have your basic sort of outfit for your champion. We have head cosmetics, we have body cosmetics, we have weapon cosmetics available to you, as well as sprays in-game, which you may be familiar with, and voice packs for all of the different champions. And these voice packs might change depending on the different skins which we have. And from there, we'll often be releasing things like cosmetic sets. So recently we've had the Valentine's sets released in a Valentine's Day chest. We've had the Code Green skins for Victory. If you've seen those in game, it's the sort of like plastic green army men figures which turn your typical soldier champion into really that sort of childhood feel, and they have that plasticky vibe, which is a really entertaining thing to have in game. It sort of brings back a little hint of nostalgia, and we also have some really showstopper skin sets coming through. We've just had the Fernando Helios set come through as well, which transforms him into sort of like a big mecha warrior. It's very stylized, absolutely fantastic, looks beautiful. And players are free to mix and match these cosmetics, so you can have one voice pack and you can have a completely different look to your champion, which can be always interesting. You can mix and match the head, the body, the weapon, all of these different elements together to make sure you can tailor your champion to not just play the way you want to, but also look the way you want to too, and add your own individual flair to what you're doing in game.
The game that changed shooters forever, Call of Duty 4, which stunned the industry by redefining the modern first-person shooter with personal player abilities and personalisation, was recently remastered for today's current generation consoles. Along with its remastered game came the introduction of microtransactions, requiring players to pay to unlock various content or simply grind their way through hours of playtime to earn the Modern Warfare in-game currency, a system completely absent from the title back in 2007. I spoke with Dominic Dietrich, hardcore gamer and Call of Duty fan who is well experienced with microtransactions and has days of playing time on the latest Call of Duty installment.
So I think what they've done is they've opened it up, so they've made the game a lot more modern. Obviously it's a remaster, and they've given you the opportunity to sort of customise your own gun. You can do things, I'm sure there's a map pack coming out soon, a bit of DLC which entices people to play even more. You get opportunities to get different skins for guns and things like that. There's all sorts of things just to customise your experience on the game that bit more. And yeah, they've done it quite well, and what they're doing, they're slowly bringing out new things for it every now and again, so it keeps us interested, it keeps us downloading, it keeps their sort of playing figures a lot higher than it would be if they all just hit it in one big blast at the start. Well, I think one brilliant example of sort of bad thing to do with microtransactions is Grand Theft Auto, because they pride themselves on having such a realistic game, and it's a fantastic experience to go on. You're doing things like you're doing normal jobs, everyday jobs. If you want to, you can sort of buy businesses, you can work the stock market, you increase your revenue through different businesses you can take control of, which is very realistic, and you're living in very realistic places. You've got your big mansion, but you don't have that at the start, you have to work your way up to that, and you're working in real currency. And I think that's a worry, because it's hard to step out of that just for that sort of minute when you're about to buy maybe, we'll say for £3 you can buy 300 grand in GTA terms. That 300 grand adds up and encourages you to keep playing and enhances your playing experience. And I think they use that to their advantage, because you think, I started 11, 12 sort of making microtransactions. 11 or 12-year-old in that sort of world, you don't really step out of that and think, right, I'm using real money now, I've got to think about everything that's going on. You're extremely naive, and you almost go into it with the fact that you have got that 300 grand already, and you're comfortable, you're fine. I'm not stepped out of that Grand Theft Auto world, I'm just pressing A, and all you do is press A. Once your bank details are on there, it's a very simple and could be quite dangerous process. I think they're a positive in a lot of ways, but then I'm also going to go back on myself and say they're a negative, because like I say, you can immerse yourself in that world a bit too much and not take a step back into reality. You can sort of just click A, like I say. I think there needs to be, every time you do it, there needs to be a bit more of a process. I don't think it should just simply have your bank details on there, press A, done, your money's gone. You can't get that back then. I don't also know, that's an interesting thing, I don't also know who to contact if I suddenly accidentally press A and I've spent my money and I need it back. I don't know who to contact in that situation, so it's a dangerous way, but then obviously it enhances your game, and you don't want to play a game that's not evolving. It's like the new maps that are coming out of Call of Duty Modern Warfare Remastered. You don't want to play the game you've played for years and years ago. Again, you want to have a new experience and new sort of times with it, and be able to have new fun with it. So there's so many pros and cons, but I'd probably say they were a positive in the grand scheme of things.
This is what happens when you show me some respect. And by respect, I mean credit. Okay? Ready, Emperor?
Real money is a lot less fun to earn. You gotta put in a bunch of hours in work mode, it's a whole thing. Obviously, the gaming community's a little ticked off about this. Instead of talking about the game itself, everyone's talking about how they feel like they got ripped off, and about how they're not into the idea of paying for in-game content that costs more than the game itself.
Microtransactions have been victim to lots of controversies over the past few years due to the fact that developers aren't always approaching microtransactions the way they should be, and they're not exactly consumer friendly. Games like Gears of War and FIFA have recently introduced microtransactions to their franchise, and it has caused some animosity between their communities. I speak with Lee Saws and George Mabry on what they think of the recent implementation of microtransactions in their favourite franchises.
So, an example of a game, Gears of War 4, and how it's handled microtransactions recently is a negative way with how microtransactions have came over is recently a UAR gear pack was released, which is a new content added to the game through a microtransaction system which is called gear packs, and the UAR gear pack had certain new characters and weapon skins available for the first time ever in the franchise and the history of the series so far, which is about 11 years. And there was a lot of decisions made wrong with the UIR gear pack because the time it was available for, and also the pricing, and the way it came over negative to the community and how upset it was to the community was because it was only available for 48 hours and it was priced so high. The amount of time it would take to try and get as many as possible wouldn't be possible, and so that sort of microtransaction and the way it's came across to the community is if you don't play for all 48 hours, you're pretty much just forced to use money. And I think when microtransactions come across in the game like this, it just you can't win. It just affects the community too much. Where if you're forced to use real money, it's an all-time low.
Well, personally, I stopped playing FIFA because of the whole Ultimate Team points system, how it's completely RNG and you literally could spend 100 quid and not get anything worth a £5. And I've heard there's been a lot of people have stopped playing it because of that. FIFA Ultimate Team has a similar point system to League, where you can, the more you play the game, the more coins you earn, and then you can use the coins to buy packs, or you can buy FIFA points, which you can also buy packs with. And there's different tiers of packs, so you can buy player packs, you can buy consumable packs. But then if you buy a player pack, it's completely random. You could get any player on the thing, so you can get gold players, you can get bronze players. So if you pay your real money into it and only get bronze players, whereas you could spend thousands of pounds and only get the average gold player, whereas someone else could spend £5 and get the best player on the game.
Microtransactions have a large, powerful presence in the gaming industry today and are clearly here to stay. By offering players new ways to experience the game with new improvements and customisable abilities, they clearly enhance the experience for the player. However, developers still have a long way to go in terms of their approach to the business model. By offering players more of a consumer-friendly system with lower in-game currencies and better prices, they'll surely hit the nail on the head and please gamers all around.
Microtransactions do have positives and are well received amongst some gamers. They add an element of progression, something for gamers to work for and to grind towards. On the other hand, they do require gamers to spend even more money on their favourite titles, a system that has become the norm in the current generation of gaming. Until developers unanimously handle the microtransaction market effectively with a stable, fair in-game currency system that doesn't force players to use their own money to acquire content, microtransactions will continue to be a topic that divides opinion.